Hello Summoners, my name is Nathan Ng and welcome back to another ProGuides video. With the preseason finally out, it feels like everyone is a little bit overwhelmed with all the new item changes. When you open the patch note, it really feels like reading Aphelios' kit all over again. Don't worry though, we've got you covered with our complete support itemization guide. Because, we all need a great support during these tough times, and you could be it. Before we get into it though, let's go ahead and start our question of the day. What's one item that got removed that you miss? Let us know in the comments down below. While the preseason has been pretty overwhelming, it's still pretty cool to see Riot pushing their new Wild Rift mobile game. Make sure to check out our new Wild Rift channel so you can stay up to date and maybe even learn some cool tips and tricks. Links will be found below. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get right into the video. Again, with all of these massive changes, there are a ton of items and builds to go over. A lot of these items are meant to be fairly versatile, so don't think that you have to go one specific item every game. While we wish that we could cover every item and champion build in the game, we're mostly going to be going over what most supports will be building, as well as commoning build support items. Regardless, we'll be tackling everything in sections so that you can better understand how the new items will flow into each other, as well as a good sense of where your champions should build. Starting us off, we're going to be looking at mythic items. First up, we've got Moonstone Renewer. This new support item is pretty much a reworked yet nerfed Athene's Holy Grail. Crafted out of a Kindle Gem, Battle Glass Mirror, and 900 gold, it's the new healing item that many of your classic healing supports will itemize. Unlike Athene's, this item specifically offers healing over time rather than an upfront surge of HP. However, Moonstone is great for extended fights as it increases your healings for each second that you're in combat for up to 4 seconds, in which your healing will increase by 150%. This item provides 40 ability power, 20 ability haste, 200 health, and 100% mana regain. It also offers a mythic passive that offers 5 ability haste per legendary item, all for the price of 2,700. Get used to that number because that's what most of the support mythic items cost. Next up, we've got Imperial Mandate, which is a pretty interesting item since you essentially get a Leona passive. Each time you CC an enemy, you'll not only do additional damage, but you'll mark the enemy. When the mark is consumed by an ally attack, it will deal bonus damage, granting both you and your ally 20% movement speed. Similar to Moonstone, it is built out of a Kindle Gem, Battle Glass Mirror, and 900 gold. When purchased, you'll get 40 ability power, 20 ability haste, 200 health, 100% base mana regeneration, and a mythic passive that grants you 15 AP per legendary item. Overall, this item will be great on supports that don't really use Moonstone that well, but also aren't really AP damage supports, such as Seraphine or Zillion. That pretty much wraps up the Enchanter mythic items, but before we dive into the tank mythics, let's cover one item that is a little bit in the gray area. Shurelya's is a little bit of an odd item, just like last season, as only a few supports will really build it. It's a pretty good item for engage and disengage since when activated it provides you and your allies a big burst of movement speed as well as some extra damage on the next 3 attacks. This item builds from Kindle Gem, Fairy Charm, Winged Moonplate, and 900 gold. It'll give you 20 ability haste, 350 health, 5% movement speed, 50% mana regeneration, and 2.5% movement speed per legendary item that you have. Overall, we can really only see this on champions like Rakan and Blitzcrank due to how awkward this item is with the stats and that mythic passive. A better version of this that really works well with engage supports is going to be next on our list. Finally, starting off our tank mythics, we've got Turbo Chem Tank, which is the season's replacement for Righteous Glory. It builds out of Bami's Cinder, Cloth Armor, Negatron Cloak, and 1000 gold. It provides you with 15 ability haste, 25 armor, 350 health, 50 magic resist, and a mythic passive that gives you 5% tenacity and slow resistance per legendary item. Chem Tank is a beefed up tank version of Shurelya's Battlesong, as with its active, you're able to gain 75% movement speed towards a turret or an enemy. Then once you've gotten in range of them, you can slow them by 40% for 2 seconds. This means champions like Leona can rush into the fight or look for picks with a disgusting amount of movement speed, as you can get there in a moment's notice. Overall, between the damage, movement speed, stats, and CC this item can provide, is an extremely well-rounded support item if your team needs you to look for picks with something like a Nautilus Hook or Leona's Ultimate. Next up, we've got Locket of the Iron Solari. This item was the classic last season and it still serves a similar function. Locket is built out of Kindle Gem, Ages of Legion, and 400 gold. It offers 20 ability haste, 30 armor, 200 health, and 30 magic resist. Its mythic passive is pretty interesting, however. Just like the old Locket, you can have this active portion that works as an amazing anti-burst shield as well as an aura. Well, this Locket offers a defensive aura that grants nearby allied champions 5 bonus armor and MR, and this is further amplified by 2 per legendary items that you have. Overall, this item is extremely good on any and all tank supports, as well as a few enchanters if they need a little bit of boost in the anti-burst department. When all else fails, choose Locket as your mythic item. That concludes our tank mythics. Now moving on to our final grouping, we have our AP mage support mythics. First up we have Liandry's Anguish, which is the new version of Liandry's Torment with a few changes added in. Built from Lost Chapter, Fiendish Codex, and 1200 gold, this item no longer requires our allies to do a significant amount of damage. It provides you with 80 ability power, 20 ability haste, 600 mana, and 5 ability haste per legendary item. The new Liandry's is a force to be reckoned with. While you won't be seeing this on long-range AP mages like Vel'Koz, it'll still be a staple in many champions like Zyra or Brand. Overall, it's a very great tank shredding option for all AP supports, but if it synergizes well with your kit, it's a must. Now, since we're on the topic of Vel'Koz, we can't really forget about Luden's Tempest. Built from a Lost Chapter, a Blasting Wand, and 1250 gold, this item steals the name of the old Luden's Echo and brings it to Season 11 as a pretty strong mythic item for AP damage supports. It offers 80 ability power, 10 ability haste, 600 mana, 10 magic penetration, and an additional 5 magic penetration per legendary item. Overall, this item is pretty strong, and you get a ton of stats from it for just only being 3400 gold. You won't see this on many supports, but on the ones with the long range damage, this will make them hit like a truck. That's going to be concluding our mythic items. Before we move on to the support legendary items, be sure to check out ProGuides.com where you can get access to the high tier coach, get a personalized VOD review, and receive our ProGuides guarantee, where if you don't climb 5 divisions in 6 months, we'll give you an additional 6 months for free. Alright, jumping right back in, we have our legendary items, which are pretty much just standard fully built items. We won't be covering the starting warding items because nothing has really changed about them, so just assume that they're included. Let's start off with one of the most interesting items that was added this preseason. Vigilant Wardstone builds from Watchful Wardstone and 1200 gold. Keep in mind that you have to be level 13 to purchase either the item or its components, and you had to have placed at least 20 wards. Vigilant Wardstone gives you 40 ability haste, 10% movement speed, and a +1 cap on your stealth wards, as well as your pink wards, and it functions as a control ward sword system. This item is a lot to unpack, but let's go work through it. It has the highest ability haste of all the support items, and the ability to place 1 extra ward and stealth ward is pretty game changing. The price point is a little bit steep for the full item, but you probably won't upgrade it into the very late stages of the game anyway. This item is extremely good on enchanters since they'll have Moonstone. That means with only Moonstone and Vigilant Wardstone, an enchanter will have 65 ability haste, which is equivalent to around 42% cooldown of last season. Overall, this item is really good, but you shouldn't build it first or as a second item. If anything, building the first component after your third item is good, and then just wait to finish it until the very late stages of the game, unless you have some extra gold lying around for the ability haste. Tanks can itemize this as well, but it won't benefit them as much. Regardless, this should be your last item. Alright, to begin our Enchanter legendary items, we have Staff of the Flowing Water. This item seems a little bit strange, but it'll be a core item on most enchanters due to how good the return is. It builds out of a Forbidden Idol, Blasting Wand, and 650 gold while providing you 60 ability power, 10% heal and shield power, and 100% base mana regeneration. This item not only gives you some really nice stats as an enchanter, but the passive also gives you and your ally an additional 20 to 40 ability power and 15% movement speed when you heal them. That means after your first heal or shield, you're going to be hitting a little bit harder and healing a little bit more. With that passive in mind, this is pretty much 80 ability power and 10% heal power for 2300 gold, which is pretty nuts. Overall, it's pretty cost efficient, and most enchanters will build this as a second item, unless you're Lulu, in which your case around this will be the next one on the list. And that is Ardent Censer. Ardent Censer hasn't really changed much, as it still kind of does the same thing as it did last season, except now it has an additional passive that will cause your attacks to do an additional 5 to 20 magic damage, alongside with the usual 6 seconds attack boost. Ardent gives you 60 AP, 10% heal and shield power, and 100% base mana regeneration. It builds out of Forbidden Idol, Blasting Wand, and 650 gold. Overall, Ardent is a really good item on every enchanter and is somewhat of a core item due to its stats and passives. It allows you to empower your ADC or practically anyone that can use attack speed well for that matter. You will be probably building this as your third item. These next 2 items are where enchanter supports will need to make a decision based off of the game state, and it's unlikely that you'll be able to build both. This brings us to Redemption, which, like Ardent, hasn't really gone a significant amount of changes. It still works in the same way. When you use the active, it will summon a large AoE zone after 2.5 seconds and will heal all allies within it. It builds out of Kindle Gem, Forbidden Idol, and 700 gold. While its stats aren't amazing, coming in at 15 ability haste, 20% heal and shield power, 200 health, and 100% base mana regeneration, you really only buy this for the heal and shield power and the amazing team fighting active. Overall, Redemption is very useful if your teams can be taking those longer fights. Next up on the list, we've got Mikhail's Blessing, which rivals stats with Redemption, but instead of 200 health, you gain 50 magic resistance instead. It builds out a Forbidden Idol, Negatron Cloak, and 600 gold. This item functions similarly to last season, which is kind of a usual trend so far. When you use its active, you'll cleanse all CC debuffs on an ally except for knockups and suppressions. This means that you'll be grabbing this item if the enemy team has a ton of CC or pick potential, since you can use it to save an ally from a long-range Ash Arrow or a Leona's ultimate. Just make sure you don't buy it to counter Malzahar or Skarner, as it won't work since their ultimates are suppressions. Most enchanters will either be picking this or Redemption. This item is kind of an oddball. It's not necessarily an enchanter item nor tank item, but it's useful for those that can actually itemize it pretty well, like Zilean. Camp Tank Putrefier allows you as a support to get Grievous. It's extremely rare that you would end up buying even the cheap component for this, considering how low support income is, but it's always there in case that scenario comes up. It builds out of Oblivion Orb, Battleglass Mirror, and 450 gold. Buying it will give you 50 ability power, 15 ability haste, and 100% base mana regeneration. With this item, dealing any magic damage to an enemy will inflict them with 40% grievous wounds, but if you CC them, it will be increased to 60%. Overall, this item is going to be a rare build unless you're someone who can consistently AoE stun like Zilean, but just know that this is an option for you out there, especially in solo queue where your teammate refuses to build grievous wounds for some reason. That brings us to an end of all the Enchanter legendary items. Let's move on to a few that the tanky supports will be building. Starting us off, we have Zeke's Convergence. Zeke's has undergone a few changes since last season, but it's still a viable option for nearly all tanky supports. Building out of Kindle Gem, Glacial Buckler, and 700 Gs, this item will allow you to link yourself to an ally. When linked to an ally, if you CC an enemy, your ally's attacks for the next 4 seconds will do an additional on-hit magic damage. Just make sure you choose the right partner. I'm not even talking about League of Legends anymore. Just in life, you know? Anyway, this is fairly similar to Imperial Mandate, but also made more for tanks. Overall, there aren't that many good items for tank supports right now, so even though it's not amazing, it's still pretty good for its price, and will be a core item on most tanky supports. Speaking of old times, we have Knight's Vow. Not much has changed about this item except a few stats, and now its passive is kind of a mini Soraka passive. While you activate this item, you can bind yourself to an ally that you declare as worthy, or someone that just feeds a lot and takes a lot of damage. While near said ally, 15% of the damage they take is redirected to you, and if they have less than 50% HP, you'll gain 35% movement speed when you run towards them. This one's good for all the masochists out there. It builds out of Crystalline Bracer, Rejuvenation Bead, Kindle Gem, and 700 gold. Its stats are pretty okay as it gives you 10 ability haste, 400 health, and 300% base health regeneration. Overall, this item is still what it was last season, and it's mostly just an additional measure to make sure that your ADC or just carry doesn't get one-shot. Most tanky supports will have this in their core build. Bringing us to an end for our tanky support legendary items, we have Gargoyle Stoneplate. This item was notorious for being the second item on many tank supports, as it would turn you into a beast hyper tank. Now it's merely a shadow of its former self. The item is pretty much decent, but it'll definitely be your last item if anything else. It builds out of Cloth Armor, Aegis of Legion, Null Magic Mantle, and 1050 gold. It gives you 15 ability haste, 60 armor, and 60 magic resist, which is pretty good. Its passive is called Fortify, and increases your bonus armor and MR by 3% for every unique champion that does damage to you, up to a total of 15%. This means that in a team fight, if you're able to get hit by everyone at least once and survive with just a decent amount of HP, you'll have an extreme amount of resistances. Alongside this, we have Stoneplate's active, which allows you to gain a temporary shield and grow in size. Its active is definitely nowhere near where it used to be, but it's still pretty okay. Overall, this item is great for tank supports, but it would have to be one of your later items because you need that HP to back up those resists. Starting off with our AP damage support items, we have Demonic Embrace. This item is extremely similar to Legendaries, and yes, you can have both. Most champions that build this would be the ones that would also build Legendaries as their mythic items. It gives you 70 ability power and 350 health, and it builds out of Blasting Wand, a Giant's Belt, and an Amplifying Tome, as well as 815 gold. Overall, this item is pretty good on champions that utilize it as it burns very well, but if you need a tank shred and didn't go Legendaries, you're completely allowed to go this instead. Next up, we've got Morello's or Morellonomicon. Just like last season, this is the Executioner's equivalent for ability power users. If you're a support that does a ton of damage, you want to choose this over Chemtech Putrefier since Morellonomicon gives you 70 ability power and 250 health. It also gives you the standard 40% grievous wounds when you deal magic damage, but instead of bumping it to 60% with CC, it gets bumped up to 60% grievous wounds if the enemy is below 50% HP, which with your damage they should be regardless. Overall, this item is pretty simple and worth it if you need the anti-heal. Just keep in mind that it doesn't give magic pen anymore, so it's not as good on its own. It builds out a blasting wand, oblivion orb, ruby crystal, and 450 gold. Bringing us at the end of our AP damage items, we have Zhonya's. Keep in mind that we didn't include all AP items that you could build, so if these damage carries are your favorite, be sure to explore the new mage items. Zhonya's is the classic item that remains fairly unchanged from Season 10. It builds out of Seeker's Arm Guard, Stopwatch, Fiendish Codex, and 50 gold. It's a really good item on mage supports if you feel like you need the survivability and damage. This is because it gives you 65 ability power, 10 ability haste, and 45 armor, as well as giving you the option to just go stasis and become invulnerable for 2.5 seconds. Overall, just choose Zhonya's as a defensive option, or if you're Morgana, choose a second. Now that we're done with covering the items, let's actually break down some general builds for each type of support. We'll be going over a general Enchanter build and a general tank build, as well as a general mage build and a pike build because he functions a little bit differently than everyone else. He's an assassin. Is he even a support? I don't know. So to start off, you want your ward item, and you want to get into either Moonstone Locket or Imperial Mandate depending on your chanter if they have high damage, high shielding, or a mix of both. For someone like Soraka, for example, you want to go Moonstone unless you're versing multiple assassins, in which case Locket would suffice, or may I recommend dodging the game, because you're not going to have any fun. Next up, you'd want Staff of Flowing Water, and then you want to have Ardent Censer into either Redemption or Mikhail's, depending on if the enemy has high CC or pick potential. After that, you want to finish off your build with Vigilant Wardstone so you can continue to place those pink wards and utilize the high amount of ability haste. Many of these tanks will be engaging tanks like Set, Nautilus Leona, and etc. They would begin with their warding or supporting item as they should, and they would go either into Turbo Chem Tank or a Locket. Locket is really good if the enemy team has high upfront burst and you need that extra peel. Otherwise, Chem Tank is extremely powerful with its pick potential and high damage from its Sunfire passive. Afterwards, you want to opt out into Zeke's Convergence and a Knight's Vow, and then finish off your build with Gargoyle Stoneplate. This build is pretty cut and dry due to the lack of tank support items and how expensive general tank items can be. Finally, we have the third of our traditional supports, which are the mage supports. These champions are all about high damage and carry through the art of one-tapping the enemy ADC. Maybe you're that mid laner that got autofilled bot lane. You want to start off with your supporting or warding item and then buy Legendaries if you're playing someone that can use the damage over time pretty well like Brand or Zyra. Otherwise, you want to opt for Luden's Tempest due to how much damage it offers. Next up, if you need tank shred, you'll be picking up Demonic Embrace. Otherwise, you'll be grabbing Zhonya's and then a Morello's. For your last item, we didn't really cover here, but you can opt for Rabadon's or Void Staff for that extra damage if needed. When you play these types of champions, it's rare that the game will get a chance to reach this state. Last but certainly not least, we have a general build for Pike. We didn't really cover these items in the video, but we'll be going over them briefly. Pike would still want to start with a support or warding item and then build Prowler's Claw as his mythic. Prowler's Claw has high AD and lethality and offers a dash through the target active that deals additional damage, which works very well with Pike's kit. Or you can try Duskblade because that's also really fun to get reset on kills and then just go invisible. Next, you want to opt for Umbral Glaive, which again gives you high AD, lethality, and ability haste. It also allows you to one-shot wards, which is really nice as a support. Afterwards, you'll want to opt for either a lethality item, such as the Ghostblade or Edge of Night, depending on how safe you feel. Finally, a defensive option. Guardian's Angel is probably one of the best things on Pike since he's super squishy and plays around ulting in teamfights, so that's why I recommend this as his final item, but you can always replace it with something a bit more damage if necessary. Whew, that is a lot of items and a lot of talking from me. Nonetheless, that's all for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching and bearing through my strained voice. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and be sure to check us out at ProGuides.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.